Reflection is a key element of a teacher's success in blended learning design, as it is for students to cement their own learning. In order to guide your reflection, there are several powerful frameworks you can use as lenses to look back on your efforts. The SAMR model. The SAMR model is a framework for technology integration at the learning task level. It helps you see the impact and potential of technology on your learning tasks. SAMR is an acronym that stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. At the substitution level, technology acts as a direct substitute for a traditional learning task, without any functional improvement. Augmentation adds some functional improvement to that technology substitute. These two levels are categorized further as enhancements of a learning task. At the modification level, technology has allowed for significant redesign of a learning task. At the redefinition level, the learning task is one that was not possible without technology. Modification and redefinition are further categorized as transformations of the learning task. Throughout this process of enhancement or transformation, the learning objectives remain largely the same. If your goal is for students to make an effective argument, you might provide direct instruction in the form of a video. You might engage students in a scenario by creating a choose-your-own-adventure form that branches differently depending on the choices each student makes. When it comes time for students to articulate what they've learned, you might have them write it on paper, type it in a document, create a slide deck, an animated video, an interactive game, or more. In each case, the standards should remain constant and not change to meet the technology. When using SAMR as a lens for reflection, you are considering your learning tasks and how they might benefit from or change because of meaningful technology integration. The ISTE standards for students and educators. ISTE, the International Society for Technology in Education, provides several sets of standards that act as a framework for innovation and 21st century skill development in education. They illustrate what success as a learner looks like in a global, interconnected, constantly changing society. The ISTE standards for students set 7 clear and attainable benchmarks for students as 21st century learners. Students should strive to be empowered learners who leverage technology to set and meet their own learning goals. They should strive to be digital citizens who navigate the digital space with empathy and integrity, with an eye on making a positive impact rather than avoiding a negative one. They should be knowledge constructors who leverage technology to search for, evaluate, and curate informational resources to construct their own understanding of big ideas. They should be innovative designers who approach problems with an intentional process for designing solutions and a mindset open to exploration, risk, and iteration. Students should be computational thinkers who can hypothesize, collect data, and break problems down into component parts. They should be creative communicators who can demonstrate learning in creative, technology-rich ways that consider a variety of audiences. Finally, they should be global collaborators who learn by collaborating with others locally and globally. The ISTE standards for educators are 7 standards that provide a clear roadmap for applying 21st century skills and mindsets to the craft of teaching. Adherence to these standards produces educators who are lifelong learners, who advocate for students, who model digital citizenship, collaborate with colleagues and students, and who use data to design and facilitate authentic learner-driven activities. Both the educator and student standards can serve as a powerful lens for reflection. Reflect on ways your own instructional design and learning environment are already creating opportunities to develop these skills, and how those opportunities have impacted your students. Search for space to incorporate or better incorporate these standards. Consider how these standards can help address your students' why. Encourage your students to reflect on their own learning by using these standards as a lens. Universal Design for Learning Guidelines are a framework for developing learning opportunities that all learners can access and engage with in a meaningful way. At its core, UDL helps educators design instruction that supports all learners by identifying and reducing barriers, rather than teaching to the middle. The framework approaches this tricky goal by establishing 3 principles: multiple means of engagement, representation, and action or expression. Each of these principles have several guidelines that are broken down further into specific checkpoints, and present throughout all of it is choice. Rather than trying to funnel all students through one average path, students in a UDL environment should have a more autonomous experience that considers their specific interests, barriers, and preferences. UDL is an excellent lens for reflecting on your blended learning design because there's a great deal of overlap between the two. The digital learning space has a number of strengths that play well with the principles of UDL. It's easier to structure choice for students, it's easier to make materials accessible, and there are many appropriate tools for fostering student creativity when expressing what they've learned. When designing instruction in a blended learning environment, considering frameworks like UDL and others can feel overwhelming, but what you should find is that they overlap and support each other in many ways. A quality blended learning environment is typically also a quality UDL environment. Use UDL as a reflective tool to seek out your blind spots and identify barriers, and you can start to tweak the sticking points that slowed your students down or excluded them altogether. By providing all of your students options for engagement, representation, and action or expression, you give each student more opportunity to overcome their unique barriers in a given context.